Abby is the most senior member of the board. She's only been on it for 4 years. That was crazy to hear that. I didn't realize the school board had had so much turnover
Yeah, Abby's the most senior person.
at 4 years. That'd be like Taylor being the most senior member of city council.
Things.
You're live, Mayor.
Had to think about it, but yeah, you're right.
Or me, I suppose. I've been on almost 7 years now.
Are we good? Yeah. All right,
Feels like
we'll
yesterday.
go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to the May 20th, 2025 Sherwood City Council work session. It is 6:04. We got one item on our work session agenda tonight, and that is the WCCLS service boundary and funding allocation recommendations. For those of you that are listening, because that was a lot of acronyms, WCCLS is basically, if you remember when you pay your taxes and vote, we have a library levy for the whole county. And a good portion of our library funding comes from that levy, and the county is going through a process right now of looking at that levy and funding allocations. So we wanted to get the public and the council up to speed. And Adrian, I think you're presenting tonight, or did I pitch to the right person? Yes, I did.
Yeah, Amy's gonna present, there's quite a few slides, so we'll go through at least the first half pretty quickly, because there's a lot of information, but we just wanted to make sure we're getting everything in front of you guys. We've been working on this process for about a year now.
Yeah.
So we'll get through it fairly quickly and have time for a conversation. What I will say is initially we had this on the agenda because this was gonna be a decision point. We were gonna be seeking feedback to make a recommendation or decision. They have pushed that decision point or date off until most likely September, but we want to share with you what we know so far.
Does that mean that we're only gonna get one pass at the passing the
We hope.
levy?
Oh, no,
Okay.
this is more of a decision point for the funding and governance.
Okay.
Of how.
You get a say?
Yeah, they still plan on going out for the levy. If the levy fails in November, they plan to go out in May. That's what you're.
That's what I'm asking.
They'll listen. I will say that, but because there's two issues, because it is. Obviously, do we go out for a bigger levy or keep it the same? What does that look like? The other side of it is the county has pretty significant budget deficits.
Yeah.
And they have, between MISTIP and WCCLS, they've been full. The levy doesn't fund the full amount. It funds about 40%, 60% comes out of the county general fund. The county has been pulling funds away from that, so that's, and that funding allocation, so that's part of the conversation that's about tonight.
Yeah.
So, but we'll cover
Thank you.
most of that.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council and everybody. So we have, oops, this is more sensitive mouse than I'm used to. There we go. So the purpose, as already been stated, we're going to focus on the draft service area map and the draft funding allocation methodologies that will impact the city of Sherwood. We'll cover the background, funding, levy cycle and levy rates, evaluating funding and those parts will be the speed version. And then the part where you'll probably have the most questions and concerns will be the draft service area boundaries, the funding allocation method, or what we refer to as the formula. And I have some upcoming dates as well. And so as you already know, Sherwood Public Library is a member of Washington County Cooperative Library Services. We're one of 13 member libraries. And an intergovernmental agreement, or IGA, between WCCLS and each member library or partner outlines our governance structure, our roles and responsibilities, and our funding distributions. And so more about funding. WCCLS, as you know, is a department of the county. They have two sources of funding: a transfer from their general fund and a 5-year local option levy, last approved by voters in 2020. More than 2/3 of WCCLS's funding is allocated to the member libraries. And at the, do you want to ask?
The other third go.
For their internal operations to support all the member libraries and all
That
the,
feels like a pretty high amount to go to overhead, like 33% to administration overhead. But maybe there's more details that I don't understand, but
There's more, and yeah,
Okay.
this is gonna change a bit.
that just feels like a lot.
At the beginning of this current levy cycle, which began in fiscal year 21-22, it was approximately 60% of WCSLS funding coming from the general fund and 40% coming from the levy. And of course, as you stated, Mayor, the general fund at the county has had funding deficits. So in the next slide, I'll show more about what's happening. You already saw this, but this is by percentage. The last fiscal year, our current fiscal year in the middle, and then what's proposed in the county's budget for next fiscal year. You can see that the piece from the levy from the general fund is shrinking. And so next year, if it passes as it's proposed, it would be equal. What's changed also is that WCSLS has a funding balance, a reserve that they've been dipping into. That won't persist. They'll get it to their new level and it will stay.
I have two questions. Sorry.
Mhm.
Is this the right time to ask? Can I wait? Should I wait?
I think ask questions,
Yeah.
but I might say, like, oh, I'll cover.
Do we have this breakout in dollars? Is dollars going up, dollars going down, or anything?
I don't have a slide for dollars. I have something one of my colleagues prepared that has it in a graph, but I didn't have it prepared let me get back to you.
You can get
Maybe not. Yeah, I might have it at the end when I come through my.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't necessarily care about the breakdown of how much of it, I could do the math, 52% of the total, right? But is the total in FY 23-24, FY 24-25, and then the proposed, is it the same, going up, going down? Yeah, and then second question, if we're dipping into the reserves every year, I assume that means the reserves are dwindling?
They're
How many
getting,
years of reserves, if we continue spending 10% a year, how long will the reserves last?
I think next year is the last year, right?
Well, basically,
Because the levy will be up, and I think that they have enough in reserves to continue for 1 year was what they had initially said, but I think that we've been dipping in enough that that's not wouldn't happen anymore.
So after this FY 25-26, there wouldn't be any more reserves to dip into.
Right. There was a policy set to have, I think, 3 months worth of reserves. And so that would be a commissioner decision if they change their policy.
And just so as we're thinking about this, a reminder, we're doing a 2-year budget, so that is just for the first year of our 2-year budget. It is a little bit of an unknown, the second.
What would happen after?
Yeah. Sorry, did you have a question?
I did. Is there with the general, and this is almost a foolish question, but is there any way that, if the levy passes, they will say, all right, this part, is 100% going towards the libraries because the Washington County General Fund commits, okay, we're gonna stay at 45%, or is that always gonna be in flux? They could go down to 20% and.
What the projections we've seen so far look like is it would flip, where it would be 60% levy, 40% general fund. But
In 2
then,
years, they could come and say, well, we're gonna go 20%.
because we don't know how stable the general fund at the county will be. They've
Yeah.
given some projections that they said it would be stable. I think I might have it.
And I think as we look at the
Yeah.
governance, that's one of the questions is how is this gonna look moving forward? Even if we think this is what it's gonna be,
Yeah.
and we're still counting on 40% coming from the general fund.
Okay.
Mhm.
Adrian, point of clarification. The reserves are coming from Washington County as part of the levy. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
No, the reserves are in the departmental budget for WCCLS. It's like a contingency similar to that the city has while you wait for taxes to come in and needing to spend, and then also historically thinking that if a levy didn't pass, and then having that time between, let's say, a November ballot and a May ballot. But they've been shrinking it. They had a pretty good size reserve and didn't need to use it. So
And
they-
Renee, was your question, what's been funding that reserve?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
It's.
I'm not sure, because
It's
this,
a long-
yeah, again, this is a WCCLS budget, not our local. So I'm not sure what all they've
Yeah.
had to go in there.
I don't.
Okay, thank
No.
you. I appreciate it.
It's been rolling from fiscal year to
Yeah.
fiscal year, though. Yeah. Okay, so then to look at Sherwood Public Library funding, this fiscal year, 65% of our funds come from WCSLS, 35% from the city. And then here's what that looks like. So this combined 65% from WCSLS, if we use the same ratio, it would be almost 39% from the county's general fund and almost 26% from the levy. It actually comes in just as checks from WCSLS, it's not split out how it comes in. But you can imagine if it didn't pass, if the levy didn't pass. Sorry, did one of you have a?
Oh, I was just gonna say, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when I first got on council, just to talk about trajectory, it was break even. So every year we've been paying a little bit more and more of that
For the,
for the city side.
it was in the early aughts, it was, do you mean even like WCSLS paid for everything?
Much break even, yeah.
In other words, our own budget each year, the deficit keeps going,
Mhm.
and it was more.
It was close. We have that history and we can.
Mhm.
pull
Yeah.
that.
No, the amount we're paying was very low and now it's gone up every single.
Correct.
Yeah.
The Delta has.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think that gets it,
Yeah.
Taylor's question, because as the county's contribution has gone down, our contribution has gone up.
Yep.
I have a really nice spreadsheet for that and I didn't print it for today. Okay, so then this is more just the numbers of our budget this fiscal year. It's about $1.6 million for Sherwood Public Library. Over $1 million comes from WCSLS, and then the city funding 561,000. Tiny bit from fees and grants. Most of the money goes towards personnel. We have over 11 FTE. And then the next biggest line item is our collection budget, what everybody checks out, the books and media and everything. And because questions come up sometimes about programming supplies and so on, I have that here as well. Pardon me.
Small and comparative.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we're looking at what, 90% personnel.
Yeah, which, here we go, 89.5%. Yeah, yeah. And then the collection being 6.5% and the combined supplies and services 4%. Okay, so then I have a context about the levy cycle and levy rates. And so, as you know, this current levy cycle goes through next fiscal year. As Mayor, as you were saying, year one of the city's new 2-year budget cycle, we have more of a prediction. Year 2 is going to be contingent on what comes out of this funding and governance. And so the next WCSLS levy is expected to go on the ballot in November as a replacement levy, so increased rate. This last increased in 2010. Washington County Public Safety will also be going for a replacement. Typically, we've taken turns going for renewal and replacement and back and forth. And so this will be the first time we're both going for replacement.
Are they doing the public safety one early? Is that why?
No, we're just all running out of money, the cost.
Whose turn was it to go for replacement?
It would be our turn.
Okay, so the
Yeah,
public
so they
safety
would-
jumping ahead too.
Yeah, so they had a replacement last levy as well. Yeah, they also
Is this
have
the enhanced sheriff services? What's the one?
the enhanced and mental
Um,
health response team.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, they roll it.
there's-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that hit Sherwood?
No.
Okay. But it hits the county, so
Yeah.
county voters,
Yeah.
county W's, yeah.
And so the current levy rate for WCSLS is 22 cents per $1,000 of assessed property value. The county is currently polling, they're actually in their second polling cycle, at a 37-cent levy rate for the library. And so if approved in the first year, typical homeowners with an assessed value, not market value, of about $360,000. Did I say that right? $360,000 would pay $132. That's from the consultants doing the polling.
That's for common sense value.
That's the.
I love those really low examples.
It's a total, yeah.
Total.
Yeah.
It's probably a pretty good average.
Oh, the total dollar amount, correct.
And so this is a graph from EMC Research, the polling firm that the county is working with. This is from their first round of levy polling. And the line on the top, that's a darker color, is the supporters. The red below is the those who oppose. And you can see as they moved through the questioning, the sentiment changed. So first they say, would you vote for this? And then, by the way, it would be an increase. And then here's some more information about what this would fund. And a negative statement to kind of, temper the audience. And it would be something like, people say that the economy is not good for going for more money right now. And don't quote me on this, but this idea.
Yeah.
And, maybe they should learn to live within their means and don't go for an increase. And so then after hearing that negative comment that some people think this, then it went down to 66% support. And then after learning that public safety would also have an increase on the levy, then it went down to 60%. And what we heard yesterday is the second round of polling that they're in the midst of right now is polling at about the same rate for also 37 cents.
Asking, because probably part of what they're talking about is setting minimum service levels that the county funds for, which, for instance, I can't remember what it was.
45 hours.
Yeah.
Libraries are open 55 to 60. My understanding is they haven't asked any questions in there. Would you support this increase with a decrease in services? So I'm very concerned about it.
Yesterday when they spoke about it, her comment was, Marnie, is that correct?
Oh, yeah, Marty File.
She said, when people were asked if they would support an increase of 37 cents for continued service levels or continued same amount of service levels, this is the response they got. So I agree. I'm concerned that they're not asking the right question.
Yeah.
But
Will that be on the ballot that it will say that they're setting minimums on, would that be part of the?
I don't know.
We don't have the ballot language yet, but there's a date coming up soon. I think it's in
Off the
June.
ballot, then.
Yeah.
I don't see what difference it makes whether they ask it in the poll or not, because.
Well, and I don't know how much service will be impacted. I mean, this will be a new requirement right now. If the money stays true to what we think we could end up receiving, our service levels would most likely not be impacted.
Mhm.
So
But Beaverton, Hillsborough, Tigard, Tualatin,
they could have an impact.
huge impact.
But if the voters don't know that there's gonna be an impact, it's not gonna impact their vote. Cause most people aren't gonna have any idea that service levels are gonna go down.
There's not full transparency.
I suspect there'll be some very vocal mayors, that's my concern.
Gotcha.
Or it'll hugely damage the next time.
Right.
They come out, but they go, well, we voted for it last
If they
time.
remember.
That's true. Good point.
All right, so here's that timeline. Right now, the second round of levy polling, May 27th, presentations on that data to Board of County Commissioners. June 3rd is when we would have that tentative ballot material, so we should know what they're planning to put on the ballot and the language.
It says June 3rd material to the board. Oh, is that the night they would approve it? Would we see it in before that? Would that be their board meeting night?
I think it's a work session because they've added in this new third round of polling.
Oh, okay.
And so, but the idea is to kind of do as much work in advance as possible, right? So June 3rd, the county would have prepared material for the commissioners to respond to, but they won't turn it in yet.
Okay.
Yeah. And then July 21st through August 1st, they'll do a third round of polling. That's the new one because the economy has been changing so much. And then August 5th, presentations on the results of that third round will go to Board of County Commissioners. August 12th, the final ballot materials will be filed. So we'll know for sure then what the levy language, what the talking points are.
So August 5th is when they would vote on the final proposal.
Yes.
Okay.
And then election day, of course, the current levy expires June 2026, and the new money pending the election results would be July 2026. There also, just right before I came over here this evening, we got an email from the county that a stakeholders kickoff meeting for the levy is scheduled for June 11th, 2:30 to 3:30. So they're in the middle, this next month, we'll also have more information about the levy talking points. Okay, so then I'll move into more context about this project. And as you know, county hired Marina and Co. to work on this project. It's been going on since March 2024. Yeah, and our representatives from each member library have been meeting with Marina and Co. in Washington County and WC staff. Kristen is the exec board rep for the city of Sherwood. I'm the policy group rep for Sherwood. And so to get to what we're presenting tonight is these two draft proposals, one on the service area maps and one on the funding allocation methodologies, both of which are still draft because, as Kristen said, this is being pushed out to September. So as you know, when we do get to the point where we have a vote, which is going to be in September, 2/3 majority vote of all city partners and 2/3 majority of all nonprofit partners will move that proposal forward. And then here's just a reminder of the cities. So we would need 6 cities to vote yes for it to pass and 2 nonprofits.
Pass out of this,
Say it again.
pass out of this.
Yes, yeah, to make a recommendation to the board.
Vote of the committee
Yeah.
with feedback from all of
Right.
you.
Just from a governance point of view, it's just advisory to the BCC. It's not binding. It's like,
Mhm.
it can be binding or they can do whatever they want, or they can kick it back to have it
Yeah.
redone. Which
Yeah.
one of those is it?
It's not binding. I
No,
mean,
it's a
it's an
recommendation.
agreement that this is how the project will go, but I think if, like, the last time we were asked for feedback, it passed, but it was.
It passed, we
closed.
voted no. but it passed.
Yeah.
You're talking about to the county commissioners?
Yeah, to the county commissioners. So
Just a
my
recommendation.
point is like JPAC, they vote on a set of projects and the county can't. The only thing that the only thing Metro could do is say no and kick it back and have a new slate put forward. Is this like that, or is it,
They have the final
they
say.
have the final say, so they could change it?
Correct.
You're an advisor.
So
Or
if six-
advisory.
if 6 cities vote no, they can still pass it.
Correct.
Yeah,
What's the point of the vote?
They're not saying that they will, though. It would be,
I mean, clearly they put us all in work to get the
Yeah.
advice
Yeah.
from all these people, so, but
it, yeah.
it's
They can-
concerning, you know. Yeah.
Yeah. So this leads to service area boundaries, and I do have some new slides from what were sent out on Friday. So this is our current Sherwood service area, but the contrast doesn't show up as well for me now. So if you can see this, this line, it's white on the center. This is the city of, this is the Sherwood Public Library service boundary. Sherwood Public Library is here, city boundaries are roughly, here. We serve a population of approximately 24,000 people. This was last updated in about 2011, I think. And the population estimate is used based on, based on Portland State University estimates for population, but because they do county estimates and cities, but they don't do library service areas. So then a percentage is applied, and ever since this was done, it's just a percentage. So that 24,000 people, it's not necessarily real.
Could be more.
Yeah. And so then working with Marina and Co. and our funding governance evaluation work group, everybody, in the city libraries agreed that first and foremost, our city boundaries must be included in our library boundaries. So this slightly darker orange shading is city of Sherwood. And as you know, the Tonquin area has been annexed into the city. So that's currently outside of the service area. Not a lot of people live there, so it doesn't affect the formula, but it would affect perhaps partnerships and so on. And then we also looked at all of our service areas aligned with school district maps. Sherwood School District is in purple here, so you can see it fits into our library service area, but not all of it. This is Hillsboro's school district up here, and then Tualatin School District in blue. So we agreed that schools are important to work with, but not necessarily going to be a final determinant on where our service area should be. And then,
Once they determine those in-between areas, then why would that be in the Sherwood district versus the Hillsborough district or vice versa? It's based on like where the closest library is by driving or?
there were a lot of various maps we looked at by drive time, 5 minutes and 10 to 15 minute drive time, and also library usage and number of visits. And so the slide that I brought here is library usage. So this is checkout data by since January 2023. And the darker shaded orange, those folks are coming to our library in Sherwood. You can see there's some spots in the Tualatin area where people come to Sherwood. There's some spots in ours where they go to Hillsborough. They're probably going to the Shute Park Library, the branch for Hillsborough. But by and large, our service area is serving our library. Let me just make sure I wasn't missing anything else on that one. Okay, so then this map, this is revised from the one you got that was really blurry and didn't have very many roads on it or anything. There's also a few printouts at the table if you want to look at this closer up. So this is the suggestion from Marina and Co. and the work groups to align a synthesis of all these data points and then line them up to voter precinct lines, because the voter precincts get updated more frequently. It'll be easier to update population. It'll be easier to, or quicker if, say, a city annexes in land, that triggers a voter precinct to potentially change if it needs to. And so then the service area for the library could also change when land is annexed.
But that's, I mean, they're making a decision to make it easy for them. But I can't believe that someone in the lower left-hand corner of that is gonna drive all the way to Forest Grove or Hillsborough to go to the library. They're still gonna come to Sherwood.
Lower left-hand corner.
Right, like
This,
that area.
this is Hillsborough's area.
Right, I can't believe that someone living out there is gonna drive to Hillsborough. They're gonna come to Sherwood.
Here.
Yeah.
If I come back up here, some of them are coming to Sherwood now.
No, I understand, but in terms of the formula,
Yeah,
that's what
yeah.
I'm talking about, in terms of the formula.
And I think it also was partially that the school district, that these people are attending Hillsborough schools and we're not going out there. There are not very many people out here either. It was a few hundred, I think. We gained some in this, oops, I'm going the wrong way. We've gained some land on the right over here, but subtracted some land here. The new estimated population is almost the same. Again, not knowing if the 24,000 was really real. It puts us in the same band either way of what, when we get further into this, what our funding would be. There was some discussion about, I think it's right in here, there's a new development going in that some of our patrons, right, this area, terrace, something terrace.
River Terrace.
River Terrace 2, that they're building, that's actually getting annexed into Tigard. So even though some of those folks come to us, it will be in the city of Tigard.
Makes sense, because it is Tigard.
Yeah.
But in terms of service district, there's, a lot of them are still gonna come to us.
They could, and some of our patrons go to other libraries. A lot of patrons use multiple libraries too. So we frequently see, Tualatin patrons and they see our patrons. It's a squishy group.
Way to do it.
Okay. So this is from Marina and Co. This is about the population with these new maps. So Sherwood, the bar on the left, the darker blue, is the it's the population. I'm going to go up again. It's their estimated population that would be here in this map. And then the gray middle bar is our current population. The light blue isn't really relevant for this, but it was another discussion point about how to think about population for census blocks.
Like dark blue, is a little bit less.
Just tiny bit. It's like 1,000 people less. Yeah. And you can see like Aloha is going to be much larger of a service area with the new maps. Beaverton.
Hillsborough took a big,
Aloha is probably gaining some.
Hillsborough and from Hillsborough too.
To the formula, our high and our low end up being the same thing. So it's a couple thousand isn't gonna make a difference in the proposed
Mhm,
formula of what the dollars are.
mhm.
Assuming
I think
they
I
stick
can
to
do
that
it.
formula.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So moving into that funding formula then, and just a reminder that everything here is draft. It could be subject to change. It changed between Friday and yesterday, so I
Okay.
updated some more slides. So you saw this slide already. The consultants are taking a hybrid approach to not go all the way based on budgeted costs, because that would just perpetuate
Game the system.
previous, yeah, and not go all the way toward per capita, because it wouldn't work well for libraries of all sizes. So this hybrid. And then you saw a version of this slide, but this is updated. So what they did is they left the starting number as the population, and then and on a future slide, you'll see those bands that we were talking about, FTE units based on population size, and then it's times a dollar amount. So this changed, instead of just saying do this based on population and FTE, and then do it again for materials and supplies, they combined the materials and supplies with the FTE. And I'll show you more about that in the next slide too. But so the total number right now for the first year that this would go into effect would be $119,000 per FTE unit, determined by the population.
So they could determine, even though we have 11.25 FTE, right, they could determine we only should have 10 because of our, I mean.
Well,
They could, but we're gonna,
It'll
Okay.
go
Yeah.
up. Yeah,
Okay.
we'll go up. So this is just to show a little bit of how they got to these averages. Each of these dots is a different member library, and there's their service population size, and then their FTE of actual. And this was using that base level services. If we were only open 45 hours, how much staffing would we each need? And so then the average of all of those is the 4.5 FTE.
So I have a question on
Per-
this. So
per 10,000,
the
yeah.
dots are the current staffing
Current
levels?
staffing levels at 45 hours.
what we projected we would
Yeah.
need.
If we had to go to this imaginary, because the county has said we will fund base level services, which have been set as 45 open hours. And the cities and the nonprofits can add to that. So, it doesn't cost that much more. I mean, it costs more, but it doesn't cost that much more to be open 15 hours versus 45. Once you have that many staff, so that's sort of a side topic. I
Just trying to figure out which dots ours, so.
But yeah,
Yeah.
we must be,
The higher one.
Yeah.
yeah,
That one
yeah.
right there.
Yeah.
No, I think we're done.
I think we're the one just below 10. No,
We're 21,000.
This would be at the
So-
45, so this isn't
That'd be us right there.
be this one, yeah,
We're just over, we're 22, so it's.
yeah.
It's the one that's just over 20 and below 10 FTEs because it's normalized to the 4.5 or the 45 hours.
So,
And then on that,
oh, should I go back?
well, I was wondering on this, when you up the hours, so do you bump some of the FTEs into, well, I know it's FTE equivalents, but are some people being then bumped from part-time employees to full-time and so they're getting more benefits or any of that?
No, they're just looking at total FTE.
It's all averaged,
Yeah.
so it's all averaged from your supervisor, manager to your on-call staff who don't have as many benefits, it's all averaged.
Okay.
So then this is also an updated slide. This part, the table on the right is the same as what you saw. But the table or these examples are updated with the new calculation merging materials and supplies.
So you think that's a good thing to do, merging the material?
It's simpler,
It
it
didn't
ends up
seem
being
to
the
have
same number.
impact.
Okay.
It's a small percentage of.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's just instead of doing it twice, you're adding it in. And the interesting thing is, and ours number didn't change. I mean, if you look at, because it's a base, they're saying everybody needs at least 4 FTE. And then you add it on top of that, another
Up at
6.75.
10.75 plus change.
Correct.
How did other cities feel about that? Cause I'm thinking of like Cornelius, where they're 50% of their population Hispanic and they buy a lot of material from Spanish speaking authors on their own, not just translations
Yeah.
to serve that community. Does that affect their I'm just, it seems like there might be winners and losers that new.
So
allocation.
the part that I think most impacts them is the service change where I think you've gotten updates on this, but it's not part of this presentation about centralized collection management.
Yeah.
And so that is planned for year 2 of the next levy cycle. WCSS would keep the collection budget. They would purchase the materials. They would still purchase some Spanish materials and any other languages that are bought, at large enough quantity, but they may not do it the same way, the same level of attention that Cornelia staff would do. Cornelia staff and many others, we've participated in a project going down to Mexico to purchase books through the county, and they won't do that anymore.
And we lose,
Right now is the, sorry, go ahead. Kim.
oh, we would lose control over our own collection. I mean, you would probably have to put in your request and
Yeah.
they have to do
That's
this with
the
all the
right-
requests.
That's the vote that happened in December that we're not in favor
But
of,
it
but it passed.
Do we right now manage our entire collection ourselves?
Yes, we own 52,000 items
So, but
and we share them.
yeah, sure, they're all shared, but we're deciding what we probably purchase all, like, so it seems to me a hybrid approach would make the most sense. Like you'd have, cause there's probably an 80%, 80-20 rule, right? Like 80% of the stuff you could centrally manage because it's pretty universal. And then you leave 20% for each individual library to cater to their specific needs. That feels to me like the better approach versus, I think the old approach doesn't make
That's
sense
the
because there's economy of.
I like that idea.
And then the new approach doesn't make sense either because you're taking away any local control. So it feels like there's somewhere in the middle that would weigh.
Anyway, it sounds that they're gonna do it cheaper than we did it, which.
Mhm.
I mean, I think if you did it right, the economies of scale should work,
Big if.
but obviously it's government, so overhead bureaucracy is always
Sherwood
run
might
out of
want
control, no
something
offense to people. who
Or
work
Sprout
there.
community might want it's different than Hillsborough community, so that's what's gonna be different.
Anyway,
Yeah, as it's been discussed so far, the savings, the $4 million savings that's been talked about for the county to centralize would only be attained if they really centralize nearly everything. We would have some small input, it hasn't been figured out yet, we might be able to purchase some materials and catalog them and get them into our library, but it hasn't been figured out yet.
And is it because they think that if they buy 10 books, they get a better price versus? Because right now, even if we buy them individually, all 10 books still could be shared to Cornelius,
Mhm.
right? And so are they literally saying that because we're gonna buy them in bulk, we get a lower price?
It's reduction in staff.
staff reduction, yeah.
One collection person at every library and they
Yeah.
maybe at the county, they can have 3 in full or something.
And just to be clear, the 4 million savings is coming out of the city side. Not out of the county side, because they're saying, we're taking that over from you, so you don't need those FTEs out there anymore.
That's why that's part of the
Yeah.
reduction, yeah.
That's,
I won't spend a lot of time on this, and I apologize, it's small, but this is also from Marine and Co. It's just to show how they derived that average for the $118,000 per FTE. So you can see direct library costs, this is the combination of FTE and materials and services, and we're just above that average line there.
So they,
Most of the cities were a little bit higher, yeah.
so they did the average based on just the cities themselves, not. Cause like Aloha has a lot fewer staff than Beaverton. Right?
This is per FTE, so it's an average.
But it's
Yeah.
per FTE across, like Beaverton has a huge staff.
Beaverton Library,
would-
yeah, yeah.
A lot of the low ones are very small libraries. So it seems like they just took the average FTE for each city and then averaged.
Right, and average, the average.
Or did they take the average of all employees?
Yeah.
Library, like City of Sherwood, all library employees, is that what you mean?
They could have taken the entire population. Or they could have taken in the average of the averages, is what Tim's getting at.
Yeah, that looks like the average of the averages. But, yeah, they're making sense.
Yeah.
Like they took, so for Sherwood, they determined our average was X. And for Beaverton, they determined their average was X. And then they summed all those, divided it by the number of libraries. But if you looked at it
Per
on a
line.
per employee basis, Beaverton would have an outside of sized effect.
Yeah, yeah. It's
What's the-
probably a good question, and so
Do you want to say? anything?
non-data person could easily screw that up.
Okay.
I want to
Okay.
make sure we have a chance to get to all the slides.
Okay. So then this is the Sherwood specific allocation that's again draft. This is subject to change. This is based on that new map that you saw with the new population figure with the formula that you saw. And so here in gray is our current fiscal year of what
This is
we,
not based on the new levy amount, this is current levy.
this is assuming the levy passes.
Okay.
37 cents.
Okay, so that's why we're getting such a big raise, because the levy's going up by. But,
You have a slide, or something like this.
I do, but I didn't want to be the one to make that public record. I do that, though. It's,
Ask for it right now.
yeah.
But I mean, just from a Sherwood standpoint, if, I mean, the dollar per thousand, cents per thousand is going up about 40%. Our allocation is going up about 40%, so we're somewhat neutral.
So we're good, but if
Mhm.
if you look at that chart, like, I can't remember the number, but Beaverton's taking like a $3 or $4 million.
Oh, yeah, because they lost a bunch of their service area.
Right.
Population.
The
Mhm.
reason I'm pointing that out is you've got two of the biggest library systems in the county of this. So we can't count on it, is what I'm saying.
Okay, but they're losing it because they lost service area, so their argument isn't about the dollar allocation, their argument is about the service area change.
That's the fact-based logical argument, but you know how this, I'm just worried that their outsized political.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
There was 3 or 4 that would lose in this. Tualatin a little bit,
Mhm.
Tigard more, and then Beaverton.
Beaverton, yeah,
Beaverton.
yeah.
Kind of the 3 of the bigger ones. Well, Hills Road, I don't believe.
They go
was-
down a tiny bit, but they
Was-
don't go down below what their actual costs projected to be. There were some very draft questions to consider. So what is being brought to Board of Commissioners in June are some things to consider about on-ramping these libraries that would lose and libraries that would gain a tremendous amount, like Aloha, to give them a transition period.
So, and just one more thing, because you don't have the slide in there, but there's another slide from that documentary, you can share that with the council. Where they talk about how they get to the overall funding, general fund versus county, so in year 1. There's a 13% haircut off of what the county's contributing out of the general fund. Right, and then they start everything from there, so part of that. Levy increase, you could argue, is actually.
Is absorbing the
Getting absorbed, is replacing what they're taking out before they start.
So you're not really getting a net gain in that, yeah.
The net gain from the current year to that year is not the same as the increase in the levy.
Yeah, basically, the increase in the levy is going to offset the decrease in the county contribution, basically.
Yep, yeah, for sure, yeah.
I lost it.
Will it help if I go back to that?
Oh, yes, I actually did. So. We're getting $1 million. How much, how much are the people in our service district paying on the levy compared to what and I should realize $1 million includes probably the county contribution. But how much is outgoing from Sherwood on the levy and how much is coming back to Sherwood?
Have that.
Good question.
Contribution. Or before and in the draft allocation, that'd be interesting
That'd be
to understand.
interesting
Because
to-
if we're sending more out than we're getting in, I'd be inclined to
Well, I mean, if we.
to
look
go
at
against the levy and then just pass something locally.
Yeah, how many,
That's in,
Let's
I mean,
figure out what they're
county
coming in.
publishes all that in tax rolls.
yeah, we could.
Yeah,
Locally.
yeah, good question.
We don't need it, but I don't care.
Or did you have another
Because
question?
I'm an insular person. No.
So to wrap this part up, here's some more about the timeline for the funding and governance work. So yesterday, Kristen and I attended this meeting, June 10th, and this is updated from your slides as well. June 10th will be a work session with Board of County Commissioners on these service boundaries and funding allocation proposals and as well that ramp up idea. And then this summer, it might start as early as June, will be more work sessions. We'll be working on governance improvements for near term, meaning this next levy cycle, as well as long term outside of that levy cycle. And then as Kristen mentioned, in September, there will be key decision points or, a vote where each member library would bring forward their agency's vote on the service boundaries, the funding allocation, and the governance that will be.
Each of those separately, or is it all one vote?
It was separate.
So Sherwood separate, Tiger separate, Beaver.
Well, separate and three
The
things.
boundaries, the methodology.
Section.
Yeah. Yeah, so you could vote on all three, or yes, or
Two,
two,
no,
yes,
one
yeah,
yes, okay.
yeah.
I'm assuming they'll have some matrix to understand how that impacts everything depending on
There,
if something passes or not.
yeah, part of the reason they're postponing is to have more evaluation, right? And then if you wanted to go see these work sessions again, here's your link because I'm a librarian. You can go through the 3 presentations specifically on funding and governance work. And that's it. I know you asked a lot of questions, but there's still time a little bit.
Renee, do you have any questions?
No, I think you guys were asking a lot of questions at the, so thank you guys. Well done, Adrian.
Thank you.
That was
Appreciate that.
actually, like, we need an hour for this work session, but I actually learned a lot more tonight than I was aware of, so that was
Oh,
really
good. I'm
helpful.
glad. I wasn't sure how much context to give, but I thought I should give at least some.
If not,
And
we'll
then-
ask questions, and you
Yeah.
go, I don't know, I didn't have that with me.
Yeah, yeah. And like, I should have brought my massive spreadsheet with me. But next time.
So as of the 2010 census, does 7,000 households sound about right in Sherwood?
1,000.
So it says in the 70% of market value at the time the last levy was passed is 394,000. And so it says at 22 cents per $1,000 of assessed property value, it estimates that last year we paid 610,000.
Yeah, we get near that much back then if we only got probably 550 back, because it was 55%, I think. Thank you.
Sherwood never gets back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, but I like to, I think that should be highlighted in everything we do.
Yeah, I'll do, I'll check it with, the new levy though, and see what it would be, because 22 cents, is it 37 additional cents?
37.
No, 37.
That's what's being pulled. Yeah, current is 22.
And part of the reason that general fund contribution is declining is because the county tax rolls have been going up 4 to 5% each year. But they've only been passing along 1, 2, or 3% depending on the year, so. Awesome. More questions? Awesome.
I mean, I feel like this has been a full-time job for you two for the last year.
It's changed my capacity. Has it?
I mean, every time I hear it.
You
you
spend
guys have
more
been in
capacity.
Another.
Is that how it
meeting,
works?
this meeting,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
you know, so.
This one on Monday was only 2 hours.
Right, usually
They've
they're
been
like
fine.
5-hour meetings.
Yeah.
No wonder we need 11.25. Library. Thank you so
So
much.
we'll keep you posted as we hear if there's any other tweaks or information.
Stuff, and if you could share that presentation we're talking about. with the-
Yeah, streaming yesterday's presentation, the full slide deck.
Yeah.
The previous one.
Looking forward to that, yep.
And the previous,
Yep.
yeah.
Adrian, I did just have a question that kind of came to my head. So currently we have 11.5 FTEs, correct?
11.25, yeah.
Okay, and the chart was showing 8.5 FTEs?
Do you mean the bands that are going across? There
Yeah.
was, we would get
11.75 or
11.75 according to this. And I didn't emphasize this, but we wouldn't have to have that amount. We would staff according to what we need and what the city, prioritizes. It's based on averages. Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
That's what's proposed.
And that doesn't mean that we're limited to that amount of staff, that's just what,
Right.
that's how we get determine how much money they're gonna share with us, we
Right.
can
They are,
employ or not employ however many people we want and can afford.
So using the same valuation and other things that we held for the last one, it bumps it up to 1.026256. So
Yeah.
just over $1 million.
And I don't know what share of the 1.4 would be from the levy versus from the county, so. Yeah, do the math on that. Thanks.
Great.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
Thank you.
We are adjourned from the work session. We'll start at 7. Our regular meeting.